welcome back to the Gen X Remix, Midlife, Laughs, and Next Acts, the podcast for both Gen X women who are done playing small and are ready to build a business or career that lights you up. I'm your host, Tabitha Jones, the Corporate Escape Sherpa and Career Advancement and Leadership Coach. Before we dive into today's episode, I just want to give you a reminder about my upcoming workshop, Escape with Confidence, Clarity, Purpose, and Action for Your Bold Next Act. It is the perfect 2-session workshop for Gen X women who are ready to finally get serious about building their next chapter before you leave the stability of your 9-to-5. You'll find the link in the show notes to grab your spot. Now let's talk about a next act that's on the horizon for so many women in our generation: retirement. Today's guest is here to flip the script on what retirement actually looks like. Wendy Leggett is a professional certified coach and founder of Conflux Retirement Coaching. After 25 years in sales leadership with fashion brands and Fortune 50 companies, she made a bold midlife pivot to help others approach retirement with purpose, identity, and joy. We're talking about how to rethink the retirement narrative, how to navigate that identity shift that comes with leaving behind a big role or a long-time career, and how to intentionally design a life that still feels meaningful. Whether you're years away from retiring or standing on the edge, this conversation is full of permission, inspiration, and practical steps to help you make your next chapter the best yet. Let's dive in. Wendy, thanks so much for joining us today on the Gen X Remix. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. It's great to be here, Tabitha.
Oh, so happy to have you. And as we were talking a little bit before our conversation, before starting recording, I think we've got some great parallels that we're going to cover today on the show.
Okay.
Before we get into that, I would love for you to share your remix story.
Well, thank you for asking. I think I don't know if everybody does this, but I kind of separate personal and professional. I know that in the beautiful world, they'd be blended, but I have two, if I may. So on a professional note, and I think I've been through a number of remixes, and I think a lot of your guests and maybe yourself feels that way too. But one that I want to highlight is when I left my corporate career to become a professional coach and start my own business. That was a major remix or transition for me because I loved what I was doing as a sales leader, had been doing it for years and years, enjoyed the gratification that I got from connecting with clients and helping my team members elevate their skills, and of course, meeting and exceeding numbers and things. And so when I ended up leaving, it was really because the company that I was working for had been purchased by a new owner. And that owner came in with such a different sense of values and approach to the market and approach to the employees. And I think for me, and maybe again, this will resonate, we're fixers, we're problem solvers. And it was like, I can make this work. But it got soul sucking to be facing those clients every day, carrying a message that wasn't mine and trying to really boost my employees' outlook on things when that wasn't possible. And so finally, I just said, I have to make a change. So it was at that crossroads that I remixed. And instead of continuing on in that same kind of path, I decided to really research what would really connect with me and found that coaching, I could have all of those goodies and more because I could bring myself forward. So that was my professional remix. And then from a personal standpoint, I'm in that, well, not even just the sandwich generation, but the club sandwich generation. So I have my children and grandchildren and also my parents. And my parents, unfortunately, have gone through some health crises. And so from a personal remix, just really shifting from being that daughter to being that caretaker. And for individuals who are so highly independent and so determined and strong and things, to be now in a different role with them is a beautiful thing. And it's a gift, but certainly a remix. So those are the two that I would share.
Wow. Two very serious remixes. That club sandwich generation, that's heavy. And that's true. There's so many women in our age range that are feeling that. I don't
Yes.
have grands yet. My baby's 30, but they're coming, and I'm, hopeful for my mom for her health for a while longer, but we'll all get to that point at some time.
Yeah.
My goodness. Your career remix, I felt that in my soul. That is something we definitely have in common. And,
Mm.
not a lot of, I should kind of shift this a little bit. I'd say there's not a lot of women who have the confidence to say, this isn't for me anymore, or I'm so grateful for what I've accomplished and what I've been given and the opportunities I've had, but we're moving forward.
Yes.
It's unless you've walked in those shoes, it's hard for people to understand what it's like to not be aligned with your leadership and
Yes.
to be putting on one face in front of your clients and employees and then feeling a completely different way inside. For an authentic woman, that is really, really difficult.
Yeah, yeah. And so for anyone listening, it sounds like you've been through something very similar, Tabitha. And I know for myself, I kind of went kicking and screaming. Like I really should have left a lot sooner than I did, but I kept thinking I can make this work. Okay, this didn't work. I'll try this strategy. I'll try this. I'll let it go. I'll convert this. And so I would just raise up that it isn't like one day you figure it out and there you go. It can be a slow burn. But if you're starting to feel that way, then that's a really important time for reflection and recognizing what are the things in your control. Where are your values? Are they being aligned with the organization, or are they being stepped on from your vantage point? Because no judgment on the individual that purchased the company. It
Sure.
was this business, but it wasn't in alignment with where I was going. So
Yeah. And that's so true. In my situation, I always say I loved my job until I didn't. I led technical teams in the telecom industry. In my last role, I was leading a national team across the entire US. And I just wasn't aligned. Same company, totally different department. And I just wasn't aligned with the leadership team. Our values were so different and the way we operated were so different. I just got to that point where I felt sick. I would get in front of my team and pass something to them, and just my gut was just like, this isn't healthy for you anymore. And relationships and trust are two of the biggest things in my life. Like, I believe that people are so important and having trust. And then when I was like, I'm basically getting in front of people and lying because I'm telling them the truth from this person, but I'm faking it when I act like I'm excited. So
not your
we
truth.
all have a slightly different variance in that story. And
Yes.
I've just seen women stick it out for so long. So tell me, making that leap, did you start building before? How did you decide to go the direction that you went in?
I wish I could say that I was building before, and I know that's a message you carry forward to your clients, and it's such an important one. I think that I just was so all in. I'm kind of well, I don't want to classify myself this way because I think that I've evolved, but I have been all in or all out. So I just kept being all in, and it didn't really allow me the bandwidth to then be kind of in that middle ground, in that gray area where I wasn't all in, but I was in enough so that I could be looking at other things. So for me, I kind of closed that door and then went back to school, became a professional certified coach, and launched my business. But I didn't do it at the same time. And I think for anyone that can, I think there's just so many benefits to that. But I'm still, doing great. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, but I would still spotlight that. I think that's if someone can do that,
Yeah.
with help from someone like you, that's a really great way to go.
Thank you. And I know it's not easy, right? We all have so many hours in a day and we've got to fit so many things into those hours. So tell me a bit about what a retirement coach does, because I don't really know that I know the answer to that question, to that.
Well, I appreciate that. There are retirement coaches that do focus on the financial piece of it. I think mainly they're called financial advisors, but there are some that specialize in retirement. But a retirement life coach like myself, we focus on the non-financial. And to your point, I think that's a very overlooked area because there is so much focus, and rightfully so, there needs to be focus on having our financial house in order. But we know that with every life remix or transition that we go through, it isn't only about the money. It's about, our sense of purpose and our sense of identity and the connections that we have to ourselves and to others, and our mindset and our outlook on those changes. And so if we enter into retirement and all of those things haven't been addressed, then they just kind of follow along with us as baggage or missed opportunities. So that's the area that I'm able to really be of support around, is that whole non-financial well-being and readiness for retirement, either going into it or through it.
Got it. Okay. We all think about retirement differently. So what are some of the more significant misconceptions about retirement that you address in your coaching?
Well, one is that financial piece, that I think people believe that if they have that squared away, the rest is a do-it-yourself project, and that they should be able to feel like, oh, everything's fine, because gosh, you're not working. So everything must be fine. And when we ask people, how's retirement? Generally, they're going to say it's going great. And if they were to raise their hand and say, I'm struggling, which 1 in 3 do struggle in retirement, I think the answer would be, you're crazy. You're so lucky to not be working. So that's one of the misconceptions, is that everything will fall into place. Another one is that we are going to be able to be on one end of the spectrum or the other. We hear so much about this, really what I call an idealistic view, where it's endless weekends and leisure and travel, or on the other end of the spectrum, a pessimistic view that it's aging and loss and 1 foot into the grave. And so what I really recommend then is that we bring it to center and look at it with realistic optimism. And the way that we can do that is being intentional and planful, recognize what we're going to be stepping into, what we're bringing with us into retirement. I think too that there's even that misconception that you have to have purpose. Richard Leiter talks about purpose with a capital P. But I think that's such a heavy weight for people, like, well, I don't know what my purpose is, so I must have missed that day in school, or there's something wrong with me. And instead, we can really be feeling purposeful and finding meaning in small and large ways with this capital P or with a lot of little p's. And we can move it into feeling purposeful rather than making it a noun that it's purpose. And that can ebb and flow with us and move with us as we move through our retirement years. So those are a few of them.
I love that. Kind of hitting back on that purpose. There are a lot of people that are probably feeling that overwhelm of, oh my gosh, I need to find my purpose. And, to your point, it can be just small things. It can be maybe a small volunteer project, or just something that you haven't gotten to in years because you were running on the corporate hamster wheel and just didn't have time, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think where we overlook it is that purpose is baked into our work. And so when we leave our work, we can feel as though we're leaving pieces of ourselves behind. There's a saying, if you are what you do, who are you when you don't? And this can be really prevalent for people when they move into retirement. When people say, what do you do? That's a big question for people to answer when they're retired. And they feel like if I say, well, I'm retired, then they have nothing to offer, or that the conversation stops. But it doesn't stop. We still have so much to contribute. There's so much wisdom. There's so much history. There's so much vigor and growth that's still in our horizon. And so it's important that we stay connected with that, and that feeling purposeful, or feeling like I matter, or there's something that I want to bring forward, whether it's helping a neighbor, whether it's reading a great book, where it's helping out your kids by taking care of a grandchild, or starting a nonprofit, or starting a new business, or anything in between, traveling, but really being present for it and soaking it all in and taking in all those opportunities through intentional travel, any number of things.
I love that. Sounds like there's no wrong answer.
Right. As long as it's our answer, because I think oftentimes people do buy into what society says you should be doing in retirement. I had one client that came to me and was planning to retire in about 1.5 years. And so as we started working together, it became very clear to me that I needed to ask the question, you sound very gratified in your work. You're happy with the people that you're working with. They love you. You have great balance outside of work. What is it that's moving you into retiring? Well, everybody in my family retired and they're putting so much pressure on me. And so it was really then abdicating that opportunity around retirement and going forward with what other people thought you should be doing. So there is no wrong answer, but we want it to be our own answer.
Yeah. That's so good. I always joke about Gen X. We're supposed to be so feral. We don't give a crap. We just do what we want to do, but we always want somebody else's approval. We're like, oh, well, everybody says I should. No, you should yourself to death. Stop shitting yourself.
Yes, yeah, because we know that should is that external factor. It's not an internal one. And it is important that we really key in to what's important to us because we become the CEO of you. When we leave career, it's our business. And it probably has been in other ways while we're in career, but it definitely is when we're retired. So we need to be making those decisions for ourselves and putting those shoulds aside, because then we want to be accountable for those choices as well.
Yeah, that's so good. And I love the CEO of my life because that's a great way to answer when someone says, what do you do? Well, I'm the CEO of my life. I do whatever I want every day.
Yeah.
So good. Now, I know when I was planning to leave my corporate job, one of the things that I did is I sat down with my financial advisor, had all these great conversations because I was really thinking about the financial piece of it.
Yes.
You definitely are going much deeper and broader. When is the right time for someone to start engaging with a retirement coach like you?
If they are in career and they're not a business owner, then like 1 to 3 years is really that sweet spot. And the reason it is it allows us to start to have that runway, like you were talking about, if somebody decides to start their own business, it gives us that runway where we're working kind of in parallel and we can start to very slowly, step by step, move ourselves out of that corporate mindset or that career mindset and move ourselves into post-career mindset. So often people say, oh, I'll do this when I retire. I'll travel when I retire. I'll get healthy. I'll get to the gym. If we use that 1 to 3 years as that runway, we can start again to take those small steps that James Clear or BJ Fogg tell us about, just the smallest step to get to that big goal. And so that 1 to 3 years, I think is that, like I said, that great area. If we own a business, then generally we want to have longer because that will allow us to really transition, find people in place that we can hand the baton to, or if we're ending up selling the business, then we have enough time to do that as well. But whatever that time frame is, I feel very strongly too that we want to have our leaving that business or that career on a high note. And so I work with clients as well as how to really have that springboard so that it's not a short-termer timer's view. So often we hear about people saying, oh, you're retiring, so you're kicking back. That isn't the legacy, and no judgment here, and everyone's circumstance is different. But we want to reflect on that and think, well, is that how I want to be remembered? Or do I want to be remembered as bringing my best self forward or leaving things in better shape than I found them, or any number of things? So it is being that CEO of you again and saying, what's important to me, what aligns with my values. So having that runway allows us to do all those things because we want to go into that next chapter from a point of strength and a recognition of everything that we're bringing with us. And also that opportunity to leave some things behind that no longer serve. I had one client who, when she went into retirement, when she became retired, her husband had already been retired. And she found very quickly that she was now running him. She had run a big organization and now she was like overseeing him. And that was a non-starter for their relationship. And so it's important, again, that we kind of key into the things that don't belong in our retirement chapter.
Oh, I can see that. I can see how that can happen in a marriage. He's been kind of coasting, enjoying his life, being the CEO of it, doing his thing. And then here she comes like, oh, here's the list.
Yes, and there were a lot of lists.
I'm sure. That's how leaders operate. We have our list, we have our to-do, we have our metrics we're going to measure you by. I can imagine.
Yes. Yeah. And we bring up the to-do list, and that's I think a misconception too, that if we have our to-do list and our bucket list, then we're locked and loaded and ready to go into retirement. And yet there's so much more beyond that. There can be the to explore list, the curiosity list, which is just, again, putting a toe in rather than saying I have to be all in. And that's an area that I think oftentimes people jump right into starting a business, jump right into full-time volunteering or taking care of grandkids, jump right into full-on travel. And if we can kind of take that concept of that gap year that many high school to college students use and apply that to retirement and give a ponder and get a pause and just take a little bit of time to reflect and say, what do I want to try out? What do I want to experiment before we go all in and make these commitments that could then make us feel very, like overcommitted or resigned having to do it or feeling resentful or any number of difficult emotions. So important to take those little steps first.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I get that. So many people I've spoken with when they've retired and I ask, hey, how's it going? What's new? Oh, I'm busier than I've ever been in my life. I ended up getting tapped for this and my kids' school for that. And I'm doing this. And I'm like, oh.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
gotta
That's,
learn that. Yeah.
I think for almost every client of mine, we've talked about the gift of saying no. And,
Yes.
and that when you say no to something, you're saying yes to yourself and how we can go about that because the boundaries are kind of, it's the wild, wild west and everything's kind of open and people start to get their hooks into you potentially if you're not asserting yourself as that CEO of yourself.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So many times I had with my mom one time. I remember I sat down with her. I'm like, listen, you don't have to have a reason. No is a complete sentence. So if you're being asked to do something that you don't want to do, you don't have to have an excuse. You don't have to pretend you're busy. You don't have to lie. You can just say no or no, thank you. It's okay. It's a
No, but
complete
thank you
sentence.
for asking.
Yeah, I'm glad you thought of me, but hell no. Oh my gosh.
But it takes a little practice, I think.
It does.
Yeah.
Something you kind of touched on a little bit, and I see this a lot. I've worked with a lot of women for many years when I was in my corporate role. And throughout the years, they've gone through different reorganizations and been offered maybe an early retirement unexpectedly or laid off unexpectedly.
Yes.
And the thing that I find in common with them is their identity is so tied and ingrained to the work they did
Yes.
that when they're on the outside, it's a struggle. And the struggle comes from not really knowing what they like to do or how they should spend their time. How they can choose to spend their time.
Yes.
Not having people to have lunch with anymore, because guess what? Their entire network is at that company they were at for 25 years. They've kind of let everybody else sit on the back burner.
Right.
And I help them work through that and give them some strategies. I imagine that you see this a lot and would love to know your take on it and maybe a couple of strategies that you share with clients.
Well, you bring up such an important point that, I'm talking about this runway to retirement, but it doesn't happen for everyone. And there are layoffs or there are early out packages and things like that. And so then we don't have that luxury of time. And yet we can still really bring to the fore, first and foremost, what are the strengths and capabilities, passions, interests that we have that are who we are and that we can bring with us into retirement. And I step clients through that framework that Martin Seligman, known as the father of positive psychology, has. That's called the PERMA model. And PERMA stands for positive engagement, positive emotion, engagement, which is like being in flow, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. And so if we look at in work, what brought us PERMA, because Martin Seligman brings forward this idea that that's what heightens our well-being. And what can we then bring from work that was PERMA into retirement with us? Because oftentimes people feel as though this is a whole new book of life, but it isn't. It's a new chapter. And we can bring a lot of things with us. We're not starting over, we're starting from strength. If we don't recognize those strengths, then we can oftentimes feel very unmoored or feel like we don't, now we're in something brand new. And yes, it's a new experience, but we're not new to experiences. And so we can bring a lot with us. So I look at that with clients. I think looking closer at our values. So we really focus on our values because we know when our values are aligned with our purpose or with our actions, then we stay more motivated and connected. And we do talk a lot about purpose as well and what things really lit us up when we were younger, or if no one was watching, what might we do? Or if nothing was at risk, what would we try? And so we really explore that because this is a fantastic opportunity to experiment and try things out. So to your point of those that hadn't planned ahead, it's never too late. It's just a matter then of starting that step at whatever point they are and building that identity outside of work, because really we're changing roles. You're changing that external, but internally, there are things that we want to be able to navigate as well. But at the core, we're still the same person we've always been. So I think those are some of the things I focus on with clients.
I like that. It is, and I'm sure that you kind of experienced this too, but you're so busy running in the corporate world and raising kids and doing so many things. You do kind of forget, what were those things that you enjoyed doing? What are the new things that you put on the list that you had? Probably isn't really a real list. It's just somewhere in the back of your brain that you're trying to dig out. Like, what was that thing I said I was going to try? But
Yes.
it's just getting out there and trying new things. It is so good for your mind and it brings things back. And sometimes it's just having fun or just taking time to play. Like we are
Yes.
grown-ups and we forget how to just play and not think about everything or overanalyze every
Yeah.
detail like our life depends on it, because at work, our life doesn't depend on it, but our job might. But in the real world, it's okay to go experiment. It's okay to have conversations with strangers. You never know,
Yes.
what's going to happen or where that might lead you to. I, I'm a talker. I will talk to anybody. And so, when I left corporate, the interesting thing was I wanted to have lunch one day and thought, oh, I don't have any friends in my area that are not at work. What do I do? So I went to a coffee shop and I sat down and I looked for the people that were sitting by themselves and I went and sat by them like, hey, how are you doing? What's new? And I built a whole new network out here in my community over the past few years. But there's just so much to look forward to when you're retired and you have that time available. I think that that's a really great way to think about it and to start planning ahead of time. So you're not sitting by yourself going, oh, what do I do with my day?
Yeah, well, and that does lead to that concept of mindset, and can we bring that beginner's mind and go into that coffee shop and start up a conversation if that's comfortable for us or that idea, resonates for us. What can we do that kind of steps us just a little bit out of our comfort zone so that we're like continuously just challenging ourselves just a little bit, so that because that's where we find the growth, that's where we find the excitement, that's where we find those new opportunities. I think a lot of times, though, people just don't come really thinking about that mindset and what their outlook is, and again, are they coming in with that pro-aging mindset or anti-aging? Are they kicking and screaming that they're getting older? And I get that. But it's not going to serve us, because the reality is we're going to continue to get older, whether we like it or not. But by embracing it, then we can really open up a lot of avenues to opportunity. And so really testing those waters in different ways and seeing what fits for us. But if we aren't willing to try some of these things, and what comes to my mind, I really held back on playing pickleball.
I just started.
I'm not an early adopter, and I thought, okay, everybody's saying so. No, I'm not going to do it. But then we have several sons, and so our twins had said, come on, we're on this vacation, let's play. And I thought, all right, I'll play. And if they start to really give me a bad time, I can say no, and I could just step out. But it was so fun. But then when I've just been playing with my husband, I've noticed that hyperachiever, go, drive, win kind of competitive side. So it's been so good for me. So good for me to think, oh my gosh, Wendy, you're you're taking something fun that's playful, like you talked about, and turning it into a business, turning it into a have to. And so it's been a really interesting war that's been going on in my mind about that. So I hope that kind of made sense. I kind of digressed, but
No, it does. I can take you to town on pickleball because I also held back on playing and I bought myself a set of paddles and balls and they sat in my kitchen. I got them for myself probably for my birthday. So October, I played for the first time about a month ago. And it was so funny. I finally convinced my best friend. I had rejoined a gym that has beautiful pickleball courts. So I convinced her, like, hey, let's go play
nice.
pickleball. She's like, I don't know how
Yeah.
to play. I'm like, well, let's just smack it back and forth and just try not to play so
Yeah.
much bend over ball where we're constantly bent over picking it up.
Yeah.
And so we did. And I was like, oh, this is fun. Well, she got busy and I was kind of waiting on her. And then finally I was like, that's it. So I went to my other friend group and I was like, who plays pickleball? So I got two more to go play with me. And so I got a little better. And then nobody was available. So I actually, this is so funny. I posted on the Nextdoor app. I'm like, hey, is there anybody out here who's a beginner pickleballer? Like I said, I'll talk to anybody. My husband's like, you are going to go missing one day. Like only if somebody shows me a cute puppy. But I was like, okay, so I'm going to post it. And three people reached out, three women. They're like, hey, we would love to play. We're not very good. We're new. I'm like, great. And then last night I was at the gym and it was open play and I did my workout and I thought, okay, you got your stuff. Just go down there and, act like yourself and maybe somebody will invite you into their game. And
Yeah.
I did. I played for another hour and a half. I was like, it is so fun.
Good for
But it's
you.
the strategy, right? So we love the strategy, the thinking, the
Yeah.
coordination, the physical movement outside. Like there's so many great things. And
There are so many great
it
things.
doesn't have to be pickleball. It doesn't have to be physical. It can be whatever lights you up. I love
Yes.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. But just trying it on and then figuring out, okay,
Yeah.
how can I take that next little step like you did? And so that just makes it just becomes kind of like you're on a scavenger hunt and you're kind of putting together all the little pieces as you go along and it's your path to weave as you do. So it's
Oh,
great.
Wendy. So
Yeah.
good. I love that I found another pickleballer.
It is
It's
addictive for
closer.
sure. And like I said,
It
and it's
is.
like you too, I resisted it so much because it's like, well, everybody likes it. I'm not gonna, I don't need to get on that bandwagon, but it is really fun for sure.
Yeah. And it gets you out from the TV. I think that was one thing when my dad was alive. Like one of the things that I noticed, and he also was sick for a long time, but he spent a lot of his time just watching the news. And I thought, oh, I never want to be that tied into my television for one, but to the news, because the news is not designed to be positive. It's not designed to help you live longer. It is
Right.
designed to, I don't know, I think make you worry. So I don't watch it much, but just being able to find the thing that keeps you happy and step outside and do it. Okay. I
Yes.
totally
Yeah.
took
And
you
that
around the world on this.
no, no, but it does bring up that point, and it's a word to the wise that they have done a lot of studies, and on average, a retiree watches 47 hours of TV a week. And so that's really replacing a full-time job with a full-time job of watching TV. And so just as you shared, that's not healthy. That's not enriching. We're living our lives through someone else. And so it really is important that we recognize that. And again, runway to retirement, if whatever age you're at, if you're finding that that TV is really encroaching upon your life, because it is addictive, we get that dopamine hit from it. But it is important that we kind of recognize that from a cognitive standpoint, from a physical standpoint, from a social standpoint, it's really disconnecting us. And that epidemic of loneliness is prevalent throughout our society, becomes even worse as we age. So we don't want to fall into that trap.
Yeah, absolutely. Great, great advice.
Well, we went
So
from pickleball to that. I
we've
think
got all over
that,
the place. We're just going to keep going, but I will laugh a little bit because somebody told me to learn how to play pickleball, I should watch it on YouTube and get the gist of it. I'm like, I'm just going to go play and, make a few people embarrassed and irritate them. It's more my style.
hey,
I'd rather
sounds
just
like
do
you're
it.
enjoying it. So that's great. And three people said yes. And so there you go.
That's my thing. I'm like, as long as I can find people that are willing to be patient. And last night, the people that played, I think they probably were close to pro level, but they were great. And nobody's ever mad playing pickleball.
Yeah.
Wendy, this has been so fun. So, if our listeners are thinking about retirements coming up, maybe in the next couple of years, I better reach out. What is the best way for them to reach out to you?
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, as I shared, the name of my company is Conflux Retirement Coaching. So that's CONFLUX. And they can go to my website and connect with me there. Leave me a note. I'm on LinkedIn, very active on LinkedIn, also on Facebook a little bit as well. And so I would welcome that. And if I may, I do have a little workbook that I'd love to offer to your listeners. It's called the No Regrets Retirement Workbook. And if they want to go to www.boldnewsteps.com and request it, it'll step them through. You and I were talking about this time abundance that there is in retirement. There's all this time ahead of us, and how are we going to be using it? And this reflection really allows us to start to see what those weeks and months and years ahead could look like, where our priorities are, and where if we didn't have this abundance of time, what we might regret. And we have that opportunity to not have that happen if we have the reflection and the foresight. So love to invite people to that as well.
Oh, I love it. So we will make sure that all of those links are in the show notes so people can find you and grab that fabulous workbook. Wendy,
Sure.
before we sign off, are there any final words of wisdom or advice that you'd like to share with our listeners?
The financial portfolio is critically important, but investing in ourselves as well is critically important. And I think that Tabitha and I have shared, why that is, and some of the things that we want to look at as those building blocks to retirement readiness and well-being. So I kind of call it taking aim, that we heighten our awareness. I hope that we've done that today. We set some intentions around what our vision and our priorities are, and then we get moving. We get into action and make it happen. So that's what I'd like to share.
I love that. Thank you so much for being our guest and sharing all of your wonderful advice. And I do look forward to staying in touch with you, Wendy. Thank you.
Thank you as well.
Thanks to Wendy for bringing so much powerful insight to the table, especially around redefining retirement as a beginning and not an ending. So here's your invitation. Be the CEO of you in redesigning your next act. Whether you're looking at retirement in 5 years or 15, it's never too early to start building a life filled with purpose, connection, and intention. Wendy has generously offered her No Regrets Retirement Workbook to help you take aim at your retirement remix with awareness, intention, and momentum. Head over to www.boldnewsteps.com to grab your copy, and all links will be in the show notes. If you love this conversation, don't forget to follow our show, leave us a 5-star review, and share this episode with a friend who needs to hear it. Thanks again for listening to the Gen X Remix, Midlife Laughs, and Next Acts. Until next time, friends, keep showing up boldly, keep dreaming big, and keep on remixing life your way. Talk to you next time.